What does he pass out?
I will make sure that I eat.
Yep. Correct.
I will also make sure I eat.
They're decent quality rations. He passes out all the meats that he bought, and a couple like small sweets. He seems like he may have overspent on food, but it seems like he's indulging as much for himself as he is for y'all.
Rist looks in disgust at his rations and goes and looks for some branches and goes to the fire and will try to impromptu cook something decent from this.
Sure. Oh, yeah. So, carefully, and much to the amazement of Hans, you managed to basically disassemble all of the different aspects of the rations you have received and somehow turn it into a surprisingly appetizing sandwich that is precisely and expertly roasted on the fire. And you basically create yourself like a modern world quality sub, despite the fact you live in a fantasy environment. And it turns out really, really well.
Ah, this is it. Strolling through the forest without anything eating ya, and a good meal at the end.
Hans, Hans, like, looks amazed at your food, even though he seems very happy with his. And he says, "Oh, you're a cook then? Are you going to cook for the camp?"
I can cook, but I'm a watchman.
He kind of like leans back and he says, "A halfling watchman?"
Oh yes, very important. Someone's got to guard the pantry.
He nods as
I will audibly just chuckle.
He finishes his meal and looks at you and he says, My mother always said that halflings are the kind of folk that would my mother always warned that halflings were the kind of folk that would carve you open to eat what you last had if it came between you and them and starving.
No, it gets right bloody. Plus, I don't think gastric juices do well for a meal. I'm pretty sure I could scrounge dirt that would taste better than whatever I took out of your stomach, especially if it's just those rations you're eating.
he nods slowly and he says, well, that was real impressive, mister. I haven't seen anybody cook like that before. Mom always just does soups. Silverhand always apparently has amazing feasts, but where the village is never invited to those. He only brings in wandering guests or people looking at the what the dwarves are building.
You've never been to a feast?
He sort of he kind of pauses and he thinks and he says, "Well, my pa did manage to kill one of them big Reikwalds once. That I guess I would say that was a feast. There was enough for everyone to have seconds. It was pretty special."
Just seconds? What about Pie Week? Surely you do something for Pie Week.
He frowns at you and he says, What is a pie?"
Rist is dumbfounded and aghast.
How to give a half
You-
an aneurysm.
You don't be pulling my leg, lad. That's not okay. What is a pie?
he looks mildly alarmed and he says, I meant no offense, sir. Hagerdorf, it's a really poor village, sir. We've never had visitors until Lord Silverhand showed up.
I don't know what to say. A town that's never heard of pie. What kind of hell are we walking into?
He looks, he kind of sits back and he says, "Oh, I bet Lord Silverhand has pies. Lord Silverhand has everything." He looks around at the four of you and says, "Well, in any event, we should get some sleep. We're still 2 days out."
Should anyone keep watch, Hans, or are we relatively safe here?
He kind of looks around for a minute and he looks up at the stars and seems to think thoughtfully and he says, No, we should be fine.
I see. Okay.
That being said, what's roll an intuition check first at.
Okay.
Rolling for a bluff, 90. Yeah, he does. You can sense his trepidation, and he doesn't seem super confident in what he just said. Like there seems to be like a part. It almost seems like a part of him believes that, but you can tell there is an air of uncertainty to it.
Verstappen will say,
I'll keep first watch manually. Get this sleep.
Verve, you find that no problem here in the forest.
All right. Verve will find a tree that has a crooked branch that will both support her weight and kind of cradle her in it, and she will get up off the ground.
Okay.
Drac takes first watch.
Verstappen will go to sleep for now. Yeah.
All right.
There was no way Drac was not setting up a watch.
So the night goes by fairly uneventfully for a while. That being said, Verve, roll a. You have acute senses vision, right?
Yes.
Okay, Verve, you are mildly disturbed by a irritating sense of someone staring at you, and after about 30 more minutes of it, it kind of sort of rouses you to full wakefulness, and you notice that Hans is not really asleep. He seems to be like if his eyes could burn things, you would probably be ashes by now.
Am I still awake?
Is everyone asleep while this is happening?
No, Drac's awake.
Yeah, Drac's gonna watch.
I will kind of sit up and dangle my feet over the edge, and I will call.
Hans is trying to be discreet, but he's like a human teenager's equivalent to being discreet.
I will kind of. I will look down from my vantage and kind of, not in a loud tone, say, "Are we having trouble trying to sleep?"
He doesn't react for a moment because, well, like he flinches, but you can tell there's like a good minute that passes where he's either pretending to be asleep or either hoping you're not talking to him. But when nothing happens, his face turns very red and he sort of sits up and looks at you and he says, I'm sorry, I've never seen anyone like you before.
I get that response quite often. You wouldn't believe it.
He sort of looks quizzically at you and he says, "Where are you from?"
Quite a ways from here. Let's just put it at that.
He nods and he almost asks something, but seems to be too either shy or concerned to voice the question. And sort of like mumbles into his hands as he tries to go back to sleep.
You won't get sleep if you have a question burning in your head, boy.
He sort of pauses for a minute and then he sits up again and he looks at you, Verve, and he says, "Are you Fae?"
They call us that.
He looks very excited for like about a second, and then his reaction kind of jumps straight to dread, but then it kind of jumps back to excitement, and then it sort of lands somewhere between like 40% dread, 60% excitement. And he looks up and he says, "Mom says you weren't real."
Drac just burst out laughing at this.
What did he say?
He says, "Mom says you weren't real."
You wouldn't believe how many times I've heard that as well.
I've heard that an annoying amount of times here in the South, and I thought you two and we're freaking allied. Drac is noticeably censoring himself around this kid.
He completely ignores the dwarf, and seems kind of starstruck, and he says, is it true what my pa always said? He always told us that if our hands or feet hung over our sides, that Faye would come and bite our toes and fingers off.
Well, I'll kind of blink in the darkness and say, no.
He kind of like pulls his fist in and he says, I knew it! And then he sort of lies down, and then he sits up again and he says, you're going to work for Silverhand?
If he'll have me and if he pays well enough.
He nods and lays down again, and then he shoots up again and he says, I can't believe you're real. Do you are you can turn into a cat, right?
If the mood pleases me, yes.
He looks mystified, and then he frowns and he says, I like the cat we had, but we had a bad crop season, and the elders said that we had to kill all the cats to make Rockenback happy.
Refresh my memory, who is this?
You have no idea.
I will kind of go, let out a cough and say, did you have issues with mice following that?
He pauses for a minute and he says, well, the grain did go bad for a little bit, but then the elders said we had to sacrifice a percent, or we had to sacrifice a small amount of, and then he stops himself and he looks up and he says, and he just sort of sits down and he goes, I should go to bed.
Yes, I think it would be wise if you got some sleep.
And at that point, he's mollified himself that he actually goes to sleep.
I will nod at the dwarf before doing the same.
So the night passes?
Yes, the night passes without incident. Eventually you go to sleep. If you want to wake up someone up, you can. If not, that's fine too.
Fine.
But you do sleep without too much issue. However, you all wake up when the sun rises, and Hans is the first one up and at him.
Yay, farm boys.
He seems eager to get home.
Understandable.
All right, so he passes out breakfast. Once again, it's basically high-quality rations. It's not amazing food, but it's passable.
Thank you, Hans, Verstappen will say as he digs in.
How soon are we leaving?
He looks at you and he says, right after we eat, if we're gonna get anywhere before nightfall, we have to cross the stream today.
Sighing and wincing as he does so, Wrist will eat the ration.
He seems to find you somewhat amusing, even though he almost seems to have a thing where when he looks at each of you, his pallor changes like noticeably. Like when he looks at the halfling, he seems like happy and normal colored, but if he looks at either the dwarf or Verdstat, he seems to get noticeably pale. And when he looks at the elf, he just gets distracted. But eventually he pulls himself together and stands up and says, all right, well, we best get going. We have to make the stream today if we're going to be on time.
Now, when you say the stream, you mean...
He frowns and he goes, sorry, sir, I don't know if that's witch talk. It's like it's like water that flows.
Of course. But is it wide? Is it actually a stream, or is this more of a river?
Oh no, it's just a little mountain stream. It's just a good way to know we're going the right direction. If we don't hit the stream by sundown, then I know I'm not going the right direction.
Of course. Foolish of me.
What direction are we supposed to be going?
Landmark for stat. Landmarks, shouldn't you know this?
I should.
I have no trust in Umki education.
He points
Landmarks.
a direction. He says we should be heading east, and then he kind of pauses for a second, and he changes the way he's pointing a noticeable amount, but not too much, and says east, and then
Towards the sun, boy.
and then he sort of nods and says east.
Sotek,
Yeah,
I want to identify if he's pointing east.
go for it.
I was just about to try and do that too.
It's not you don't.
I have orientation. I know where north is because the sun is visible.
Great, he's pointing east.
Okay.
All right, I'm happy with this.
East enough. He seems to vaguely know where he's going. All right, you set off. He kind of makes a decent amount of small talk with y'all. More. He doesn't really get too involved in any more conversation with Verstat. Verv, he keeps throwing bizarre questions your way. He asks you if you can fly. He asks you if you can eat grass. He asks you if you can turn invisible. He asks a lot of really bizarre powers that you've never heard of an elf having, but he seems to feel very certain you should have.
Well, basically what I'll do is I'll downplay or, like turn or avoid as many questions as I can. That's basically how I'll go about it.
All right.
Drac will walk up to the elf and say, "Apparently, your kind is a topic of a lot of discussion amongst his village. Will tell you."
Well, we are just about everywhere. We're myths and legends and the boogeyman of the forest.
Not where I'm coming from.
And apparently places with a lack of pie.
He does actually inquire to you about the nature of pie and exactly what is a pie. And after
If it's a meat pie, you don't ask what's in it, you just eat your meat pie. But what a pie is, it's basically pastry crust around an inside filling of delicious food.
when you say that, he has sort of an aha moment. He goes, "Oh, I've had something like that. We on a good season, sometimes we'll trade Jettenberg for bread, and my mama makes some mean, I guess you would call it pie. She puts things in the bread, and then you eat it."
Oh, thank the gods, at least you aren't that bad. You've got something like pie.
He says,
Even if it is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard.
He nods proudly and says, "Oh yes, I've only had it twice. It's after Mama died, nobody really knew how to make it, and we could only afford it, really, those 2 times.
Just think, Wrist, you could show an entire village the way of the pie.
Verv, roll a perception check right now.
Any bonuses, minuses?
No, not that I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah, right on mark.
Okay, the forest, it's a lot like other Empire forests in that it's very bizarre to you. You've grown up very used to like a living forest that almost kind of actively has communication and is readable to you. These forests all seem very sinister and dead in comparison. Like, if they do have a will, it's not a good one. They seem very wild in a bad sense. That being said, it's not like these forests are not terribly dangerous seeming, but you feel very uneasy here. To the point that you feel like if there was something you need to be alerted to, you likely wouldn't be able to detect it just because you feel so out of place.
Okay.
All right. After a while, about 3 p.m. in the afternoon, you take a small break for lunch, and not too long after that, Hans excitedly announces that, I know where we are, and you can see just down a hill, just a fairly small, quaint mountain stream flowing down from one of the Hager cribs, past him and over towards Jettenberg.
Just as you said, Hans, it's a stream.
He nods and he says, good thing too. For a moment I was really worried that we went too far north and then we would have ended up between the Hager cribs and we probably, well, let's just be glad we didn't.
Indeed.
as you're walking, he says, "We used to take wagons to pick people up from the Pickled Troll Inn, back before Franz, before Thomas, before Eins. I think it was a while ago. But in any event, we used to send a wagon with the bloody hounds guiding it, but apparently Lord Silverhand said it was too expensive to keep doing it."
Now, you said that before, the bloody hounds. At first, I thought you were referring to a pack of dogs. What are you referring to when you say that?
He sort of gets a semi-amused look on his face and says, "Oh, you shouldn't call them dogs. That's kind of what they are, in my opinion, but they'll beat you up if you say that to them. They're mercenaries. They're soldiers that work for Silverhand. I don't think he likes them too much, though, but, they take coin. They keep the town safe."
Of course, mercenary with a mind on his coin can be a good thing.
He sort of nods absentmindedly and says, "They're a little, well, they can be a little bit much sometimes. But overall, we finally got to a point where the dwarves are nice enough to keep him out of the village. Braun doesn't let them mess with us anymore, so that's made things a lot better."
That is good. Do you happen to know how they earned their nickname, the Bloody Hounds?
He frowns and he says, "Something to do, my pa said it had something to do with beastmen. I don't know, they'll talk about it, but the stories they tell are kind of ridiculous. Like, one of them always talks about how they were the last line of defense against some kind of Minotaur charge, and another one will say they fought a giant, and another one will say that it's because they took on a sorcerer who could turn into dogs. I don't know. I don't believe all of those stories."
Oh, sound fairly believable. I've seen all three of those things.
He seems further impressed yet perturbed by your existence.
Thank you, though, Hans.
Hold on, I'm going to turn on a fan real quick. It's hot in here. Alright, anyway. So you arrive to the stream. And Hans nods to you and says, "Alright, we can break here for a bit so everyone can refresh. I'm going to run up ahead to check a few markers. The Bloody Hound should have come through here already recently. I'm going to see if they left any reports behind."
Alright, you go do that. We'll wait here, as you said.
Just
Don't
make
get
sure
lost.
you come back, boy.
He waits and says, "Oh, I won't go out of eyesight. I just gotta." He points to you see a boulder and a few trees, and he goes, "They usually will scratch markings there to let us know if everything's all clear." Anybody want to take a swim or bath or just drink water or sit or what?
I will probably...
You have been marching solidly for a day.
I will probably take a bath, yes.
Drink, and that's about it.
Verstadt will fill his water skin and, take a bath.
Okay, so Verstadt, you're filling your water. Riss, you put your feet in the water, hopefully downstream of that. What were the other two doing?
I'm taking a bath.
Drax getting drink.
Okay.
I will take lunch out of my backpack, out of my sling bag to take a nibble.
Great. So you all do that. Hans
Drax
runs.
is also keeping an eye on Hans.
Hans runs off a little bit ahead, and you see him heading directly for the rock. However, as he gets just close enough to the rock, he seems to walk into something, and he stops, splayed out kind of awkwardly, and he pulls back, and he looks really confused.
Drax gets up and starts running.
Not yet. And then he looks up, and he screams. Everybody, roll initiative.
Also, we need control of our tokens.
Yeah, these tokens have control over.
Hold on, I can fix that
Yeah,
easy.
because they aren't linked to our sheets.
Yeah, well, that's because they're different tokens. I'm just going to delete them and replace them with your current ones, though. Boop. I'll just make y'all a little bit smaller. Oops. Too small.
straight initiative roll, right?
Do you not have the fancy thingamajigger?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Ben, are you able to link that?
I don't think it's that complicated. Let me just look real quick.
Yeah, give me a second.
Each character takes a turn in initiative order, starting with the character with the highest initiative.
Yeah, we could just do it the normal way.
Wait, have we not been doing it the normal way?
No, we've been rolling.
We've been using an optional rule that adds variation. The basic rule is you just take the
Oh,
initiative
well,
and that's your initiative.
If you can get it from your campaign real quick, that's fine. We'll just use that.
Okay.
We can just use the macro real quick. Everybody here knows how to do it, so it's not hard. I prefer the variance. Keeps things exciting.
Yeah, no, I do.
I might not go last.
Alright, I'm gonna post it in the team speak.
Okay.
Because I'm fairly certain I have the shittiest initiative in the party.
Alright, there you go. Just make sure you have your token selected.
Alright, so it's 1d10 plus their initiative. Okay. Oh, it should be /EM, not /me, I think.
Oh,
It doesn't
me
matter.
works.
Oh, okay.
Both of them work. It's the
Okay, it's just okay. So I can
Damn it! So close.
do this easy for mine. All right.
No, you want the GM macro?
What do you mean the GM macro?
It gives it to you and doesn't display it to the players.
And
And you just click it, and it works on any token.
Oh
you
yeah,
select.
if it works on any token, then yes.
I could use that in my campaign.
Damn it!
Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna roll it here. It's fine. I've got my stuff here.
All right.
One.
All right. That way I can tell chat.
Can you put it in?
So let's start
TeamSpeak
with
then? I'll use it
Yeah.
for mine.
what is this? This is the feral giant spider.
Fucking one, Ben. I hate you.
Initiative
almost
initiative
not
is
left.
I, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
INT is intelligence.